It's a beautiful sunny morning at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan right now, where under the cloudless sky, as you can see, some light winds and a temperature right around near 67 degrees Fahrenheit. A Russian cosmonaut, a Danish astronaut, and a Kazakh cosmonaut are strapped in aboard a Soyuz spacecraft 160 feet atop a Soyuz booster, ready and primed to launch just about 52 minutes from now at 10:37 a.m. local time over there in Baikonur, 11:37 p.m. Central Time tonight, 12:37 a.m. for those over on the eastern seaboard. Right now you're looking at a live view of the Soyuz rocket on the Site 1 launch pad at Baikonur, and a team over there of controllers watching over all the systems aboard the rocket and the crew. The spacecraft right now fully fueled and ready for launch. No issues being tracked throughout the day, which began with fuel and oxidizer loading shortly after 7:30 p.m. Central Time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. At this point, the launch vehicle's control systems all being prepared and the control gyros activated. But good evening to everyone. This is Mission Control Houston coming to you live from the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. Together with flight control teams around the world, the team here in Mission Control watching over the Expedition 44 crew and the station systems, and ready to support tonight's launch of Andreas Mogensen, a Danish astronaut representing the European Space Agency, Russian cosmonaut Sergei Volkov representing Roscosmos, the Russian Space Agency, and Kazakh cosmonaut Aydin Ambatov from Cosmos, the Kazakh Space Agency. Volkov, leading it off, is a spaceflight veteran with 2 previous long-duration missions to the International Space Station on his resume, while Mogensen and Ambatov will be making their first journeys into space today. And these 3 are about to begin a 2-day flight to the International Space Station, with docking scheduled for this Friday, September 4th at 2:42 a.m. Central Time, 3:42 a.m. Eastern. The docking of the Soyuz was changed from the normal fast-track 4-orbit rendezvous to a 34-orbit 2-day launch docking by the Russian flight controllers just last week, after some additional analysis showed that the station was at a bit of a higher altitude than was planned due to some favorable space weather, resulting in less atmospheric drag on the station complex. So after some recalculation, it was decided to default back to that 2-day rendezvous profile. So again, the Soyuz will be arriving on Friday. Once it arrives, the Soyuz TMA-18M will be docking with the Poisk module, also known as MRM-2, or the Mini Research Module 2, which is a port that is on the space-facing side of the Russian segment on the space station. Poisk was just freed up after last Friday's relocation of the Soyuz TMA-16M spacecraft, which was previously docked to that module, now over on the aft end of the Zvezda service module, which that move coming just last Friday, with crew members Scott Kelly, Mikhail Kornienko, and Gennady Padalka loaded in for the brief trip. The Soyuz TMA-18M crew will join the 6 crew members currently on board the station. They are made up of Commander Gennady Padalka from the Russian Space Agency, now humanity's most experienced space flyer, and flight engineers Scott Kelly and Mikhail Kornienko. Those 3 have been on board the station since March 27th U.S. time. Also going to be joining with Kjell Lindgren, another NASA astronaut, Oleg Kononenko, a 3rd Russian cosmonaut on board, and Kamiya Yui from the Japanese Space Agency, who have been on board since July 22nd U.S. time. The arrival of Volkov, Mogensen, and Ambatov will mark the first time in nearly 2 years since 9 crew members were aboard the station at once, the last time being back in early November of 2013, when Koichi Wakata, Mikhail Tirin, and Rick Mastracchio brought the Olympic torch to the International Space Station, which at that time had 6 people on board for Expedition 37. The torch was brought out during a Russian spacewalk and displayed, and then returned to Earth just 1 week later, when Fyodor Yurchikhin, Karen Nyberg, and Luca Parmitano returned. Veteran cosmonaut and Soyuz commander Sergei Volkov is the only long-duration ISS crew member aboard today's Soyuz launch. He's joined by the 2 visiting flight engineers who are only going to be staying on board the station for roughly 8 days, Danish astronaut Andreas Mogensen and Kazakh cosmonaut Aydin Ambatov. We're going to be spending their short time on board focusing on a number of different research studies, also studying some of the effects of weightlessness on the human body. The two short-duration crew members will return to Earth aboard the Soyuz TMA-18M spacecraft, along with current Expedition 44 Commander Gennady Padalka on September 11th, U.S. time. Meanwhile, NASA astronaut Scott Kelly and Mikhail Kornienko are nearly at the midway point of their long-year mission. Again, they arrived there back in March of earlier this year and are going to return home in March of 2016. But meanwhile, here in Houston tonight, the team in Mission Control monitoring tonight's launch, getting updates on the flight from their Russian counterparts. Today, the flight director is Dina Cantella with the Orbit 3 team, and there at the Capcom position is Luca Parmitano, an Italian astronaut who, again, was one of those crew members on board the last time we had 9 people on board the International Space Station. Just joining them at the console there, NASA astronaut Reed Wiseman, who has some Soyuz flight experience of his. Williams are going to be over in one of our other control centers here in Houston, supporting tonight's launch and the team. During the Soyuz's climb to orbit, tracking and telemetry is going to be downlinked to the ground stations along the flight path and routed over to the Russian Mission Control Center just outside of Moscow in the town of Koryov. So as of right now, we're just a little under 46 minutes away from launch. Sergei Volkov, Andreas Mogensen, and Nadine Amatov again inside their Soyuz craft, poised and ready to head towards the International Space Station. Each Soyuz crew has a mission logo for their flight. The shape of the Soyuz TMA-18M crew mission patch, designed in part to pay tribute to the Apollo Soyuz mission, which celebrated its 40th anniversary just this past July. Inside the Soyuz object, the object you see, or inside the Soyuz capsule itself, you may see an object hanging over the commander seat during the ascent into orbit. It's a toy pig, a small piglet given to Sergei Volkov by his son, and was taken with him on his previous mission as the Soyuz commander back in 2011. That toy usually hangs there as a visual indicator of when the crew is in weightlessness, which occurs just under 9 minutes into their flight. And we are, again, just under 45 minutes away from launch, again scheduled at 11:37 p.m. Central Time, 12:37 a.m. Eastern Time, 10:37 in the morning over there in Baikonur. So again, as you can see, it's morning over there in Baikonur. Everything looking good, especially weather-wise, although the Soyuz rocket, very hardy launch vehicle, able to survive even some of the harshest launch conditions, but everything looking great for this crew's launch today, just about 43.5 minutes from now. And again, if you're just now joining us, we won't be doing our typical single-day launch to docking coverage today, as the docking was moved to a 2-day rendezvous profile. It's going to be occurring this Friday again, as the crew on board will just take a little bit longer to reach the station due to the station's altitude and calculations. A docking scheduled to come on Friday, September 4th at 2:42 a.m. Central Time, 3:42 a.m. Eastern. So the Soyuz crew was awakened at about 2:37 p.m. Central Time today, which is roughly about 9 hours prior to the launch. The crew members then participating in all the final pre-launch activities, as is tradition with all of these crews. Before departing for the launch pad, all 3 crew members autographing the doors of the Cosmonaut Hotel in Baikonur, Kazakhstan, where they spend their final days in quarantine right before the launch. Again, this is the first time to sign the doors for Mogensen and Ainbatov, but Volkov himself, a veteran space flyer, making his 3rd flight to the International Space Station. This will be his 3rd signature on that door. And the 3 crew members representing 3 different space agencies with this launch today, both the Russian Federal Space Agency Roscosmos, the European Space Agency ESA, and Kazcosmos, the Kazakh Federal Space Agency. Then receiving a traditional blessing from a Russian Orthodox priest. The priest also typically blessing the rocket itself a day or 2 before the launch, and any lucky media members who happen to be out there. And then at around 5:37 p.m. Central Time today, the crew departed the Cosmonaut Hotel and made their way down, the traditional song playing in the background for all of these walkouts. Typically joined by any friends, family, and well-wishers, and also program guests and other VIPs there to attend the launch. They then board a bus for the ride over to the Integration and Suit-Up facility over at what's known as Building 254 on the Baikonur Cosmodrome. So departing from the town of Baikonur itself out onto the Cosmodrome territory.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Again, this took place just a little over 5 hours ago at roughly 5:37 p.m. Central Time. The crew departing their rooms at the Cosmonaut Hotel and boarding onto a bus before heading out to the Integration and Suit-Up facility, giving some final waves to folks there at the Cosmonaut Hotel. And the crew arriving at that Integration and Suit-Up facility, also known as Building 254, at about 6:22 p.m. Central Time today. Each of the crew members undergoing their final medical exams and then getting suited up in their Sokol launch and entry suits. As you can see, the white suits being assisted by the suit engineers down there in Baikonur. Once they're suited up, the suits are pressurized just to ensure the integrity of all of their seals, make sure that they're flight ready. The suit-up activities beginning at around 7:07 p.m. Central Time, which is just 4.5 hours prior to liftoff. You can see veteran cosmonaut Sergei Volkov there in the background. Andreas Mogensen, the Danish astronaut representing the European Space Agency on this flight today, being suited up earlier this evening or the early morning over there in Baikonur. And then the third and final crew member for this evening being suited up earlier, Aidin Ainbatov from the Kazakh Space Agency. This will also be his first time into space. 2 rookies on this space flight. And the 3 crew members will wear these Soko launch and entry suits for exactly what they're named after, launch and entry. Basically all of the dynamic events while they're inside of a Soyuz craft.
Of course. No. So we're done. We can undock.
And so at this point they head into a room to do those air pressure checkouts. Again, each of the suits, the crew members going into a mock-up Soyuz seat one by one and having their suits pressurized just to ensure that they have a tight seal and are flight ready. And while this is happening, once they get their suit check out, they're able to head over to the protective pane of glass in place to help maintain their quarantine, to speak to various officials from their home space agencies, and also getting a chance to talk to friends and family. This one of the last, or the last chance for most for the crew to talk with everyone prior to heading out to the launch pad. Also getting a chance to relax a bit while going through these leak checks.
Yeah, Artyom says the things he needs in a very low voice. Well, have a successful flight, and we're going to miss you. What about the mirror? Docking on September 4th. I would like to wish
This right here, Igor Komarov.
Successful trip to the station, and in 10 days time we're going to meet the two of you guys, and for you, you're going to work until March. I would like to express the Vice Prime Minister's personal wish, for a successful flight.
so you three comrades to go to space. So I'm speaking here on behalf of the European Space Agency, and also I was asked by the Minister of Denmark to say a few words. So it's really a pleasure for us and an honor for us to have all three of you together in space. And as I said this morning, you are something like our ambassadors in space, working together across national boundaries and above our Earth. And at the same time, we rely on your report, what you see from our globe, and we are really looking forward to getting all the information from the EU. So all the best for the flight, a safe trip, good experiments, which is also important, and then a safe trip home. Thank you very much, and all the best for you.
We're going to be looking forward to seeing you on the ground with the very best results. All the best.
And so after exchanging some final words with friends, family, and officials from the various space agencies, the crew members get ready to depart Building 254, waving farewell to everyone as they walk down the tarmac to once again load up onto the buses. Walking down as they'll be seated in their Soyuz spacecraft following this, as they are right now as we await the launch. Saluting the members of the Russian State Commission.
Chairman of the Intergovernmental Commission on behalf of the crew. The report is accepted. Have a good trip. Okay, turn around. Turn around, gentlemen.
Good luck, Andy. All the best.
Three crew members boarded their bus at about 8:37 p.m. Central Time, riding it on over from Building 254 to launch pad number 1. Drive typically takes about 25 minutes, and they arrived at the pad at 8:59 p.m. Central Time.
The crew ready for lunch. Hold on a second. Let's take pictures. They're holding on to me so I don't divert from this path. Good luck.
So the crew members wave goodbye at the pad and then board the elevator for the ride to the top of the Soyuz rocket in order to get into that Soyuz capsule. At this point, they've been on board for about an hour and a half now. Soyuz rocket, as you can see behind them, billowing oxygen, was fueled about 3 hours prior to the scheduled liftoff. Final elevator ride up to the capsule, the three crew members ready to load into the Soyuz spacecraft, suited up and ready to go. And now we're back to our live video of the rocket on the pad, just 27.5 minutes away from liftoff. Still on track for that launch time of 11:37 p.m. Central Time, 12:37 a.m. Eastern Time, 10:37 in the morning over in Baikonur. This real quick, a live look inside of the Soyuz capsule, looking at Kazakh cosmonaut Aidin Ambatov, who's in the right seat. In the center seat will be Sergei Volkov, and over on the left, Andreas Mogensen. During the climb to orbit, tracking and telemetry from the Soyuz vehicle is downlinked to ground stations along the flight path and is routed to the launch control bunker near the launch pad in Baikonur, and then out to the Russian Mission Control Center just outside of Moscow. Flight is controlled from the bunker until shutdown of that third stage engine, when it's then transitioned over to the Russian Flight Control Center that we're looking at right here. And just seconds after the Soyuz reaches orbit, the vehicle's command and control system will get activated, and stored computer commands will then deploy all of the navigation and communications antennas along with the solar arrays, which are deployed to collect power for use by the onboard batteries to generate electricity for all the Soyuz systems. The first antennas to be deployed will be the Kurs rendezvous and docking antennas, which are used to provide automatic range and rate of closure information for the final approach by the Soyuz for its docking with the Poist module, which again is going to be coming up on Friday. And then immediately after reaching that orbit, the crew overseeing the program activation sequence of a variety of systems just before the spacecraft passes out of range of the Russian ground stations. Those systems including the spacecraft's power supply system, all of its radio communication systems, and also the very critical motion control system. And during today's flight, the Soyuz will automatically execute the first two of several orbital adjustment burns, planned as the vehicle fine-tunes its path towards the International Space Station. And veteran Russian cosmonaut Sergei Volkov is the commander of the Soyuz vehicle and is going to be making his third journey into space today. Andreas Mogensen is sitting to Volkov's left and Aidin Ambatov to his right. The Soyuz call sign from launch through docking will be Eradanus, one of the largest constellations beginning near Orion in the northern hemisphere and stretching all the way to the southern hemisphere. It's the same call sign that Volkov used for his two previous launches aboard Soyuz TMA-12 back in 2008 and aboard TMA-18M in 2011. Why don't we take a moment now to learn a little bit more about Sergei Volkov as he heads to the International Space Station for his third long-duration mission.
I grew up in Star City, and it happened because my father was a cosmonaut. In our building lived a lot of people, very famous cosmonauts like Alexei Leonov, Valentina Tereshkova, all cosmonauts who were involved in the Soviet space program. That's why I was able to see all of them. No, it's interesting that, you know, when you and your father doing the same job and you have much in common. While we are sitting together during our family meal, and of course we not really talk about our profession, but time to time when some occasion, I don't know, we just start talking about it. And it's interesting to use his experience of his space flight in my flight, and it's really great. It's very knowledgeable. You know, program is so interesting, and of course I'm looking forward to be again part of the station crew and doing all those experiments, and of course support my friends Scott and Misha on their long journey, 1 year flight. I'm Sergei Volkov. I am a cosmonaut.
And along with Sergei Volkov, European Space Agency astronaut Andreas Mogensen is going to be launching today. He'll be achieving 2 firsts as he blasts off today. Not only his first trip into space, but he'll also enter the history books as Denmark's first astronaut. Mogensen was himself born in Copenhagen, where he received an international baccalaureate degree from the Copenhagen International School, later received a master's degree in aeronautical engineering from the Imperial College in London in 1999, and a doctorate in aerospace engineering from a little bit closer to us here at the University of Texas in Austin in 2007. Some of his research interests include guidance, navigation, and control of a spacecraft during entry, descent, and landing. Probably something pretty important to know quite a bit about for his upcoming next 10 days. Also doing a lot of research into mission analysis and design and trajectory optimization. Mogensen also served as part of the 19th NASA Extreme Environment Mission Operations, affectionately known as NEMO. He was on the team in September of 2014, spending time underwater in the Aquarius Laboratory off the Florida Keys to help train for some spaceflight techniques. And then some of his hobbies when he's not doing that include rugby, basketball, squash, scuba diving, skydiving, kite surfing, kayaking, and mountaineering. Some of the other interests he's told us about include astrophysics, exobiology, and evolution. Mogensen's going to be spending just about 8 days aboard the International Space Station on a short duration stay with a pretty busy schedule of experiments that he's going to be staying busy with. About 20 European experiments on the docket for Mogensen during his time on board, including testing out a new suit that could help alleviate back pain sometimes suffered by astronauts. He's also going to be operating a car-sized rover and using augmented reality goggles to help guide him through maintenance tasks. And of course, he's joined by his fellow first-time flyer Adin Ambitov today. Ambitov, a colonel and military pilot from Kazakhstan. He was originally selected for Soyuz cosmonaut training back in 2002 and initially trained at Star City, Russia for 6 years before returning to active duty in the Kazakh Air Force. During that time, he founded the Institute for Space Development to promote the space industry in Kazakhstan, and also founded the Young Cosmonaut School. He was selected for this flight after the departure earlier this year of British singer Sarah Brightman, who left mission training at Star City, Russia. And then he's going to be only the third Kazakh cosmonaut to fly into space. And welcome back again. This is still a live feed of that Soyuz rocket. Andreas Mogensen, Sergei Volkov, and Adin Ambitov inside, ready to head towards the International Space Station. We're now under 19.5 minutes away from launch. At this point, suit leak checks should be underway. The emergency escape system has been armed on board the rocket. That escape tower would fire in the event of any issues with the rocket during the launch. System designed to pull the spacecraft and the crew clear of the booster, enabling the Soyuz capsule to parachute to a safe landing in the event of an emergency during the launch or the early stages of the climb to orbit. The Soyuz rocket itself stands 162 feet tall, weighing in at 680,000 pounds, consisting of the Soyuz TMA-18M spacecraft inside of a protective shroud at the top and the three-stage Soyuz FG booster below. The spacecraft was mated to its booster in Baikonur on Sunday. The entire rocket transported by rail car to the launch pad at 7 a.m. Baikonur time on Monday. That rocket leaving the building at 7 a.m. on the dot, as is tradition every single time for these launches. Soyuz spacecraft with its 3 crew members on board will sit high above the 3 stages of the Soyuz booster, which uses kerosene, also known as RP-1, or refined rocket fuel basically, and liquid oxygen as the propellant. The first stage has 4 liquid engines strapped to the side of the core vehicle. Each of those is going to burn for about 1 minute and 58 seconds before they drop away. As they're burning, the core stage of the Soyuz rocket will also fire for the first stage. And again, about 1 minute and 58 seconds into flight, the the launch escape tower will jettison, and then the strap-on boosters will drop away. At that point, the rocket itself will be about 30 miles high and downrange 73 miles, a velocity of almost 4,000 miles an hour. The core stage will continue to burn. The launch shroud will be separated until that second stage also does its job, and then it's time for the third stage to ignite. At that point, it'll be at an altitude of about 103 miles in height. The third stage will ignite, pushing away from the second stage and burning until 8 minutes and 45 seconds into the flight. And then at that point, the Soyuz craft will be in its preliminary orbit of 143 by 118 statute miles. And strapped in and ready for that flight atop the rocket, the Soyuz TMA-18M spacecraft with all 3 space flyers on board, now just 16.5 minutes away from launch. The whole Soyuz spacecraft itself is 23.5 feet long and weighs in at 15,650 pounds and is comprised of 3 different modules. The descent module, situated in the middle of the Soyuz vehicle, contains customized seats for each of the crew members that they're strapped into during launch, entry, and landing, and contains all of the controls and displays necessary for the flight. Also contains all of the life support systems, batteries for re-entry and landing, and the parachutes and soft landing rocket engines to slow the Soyuz just before touchdown when it lands in Kazakhstan. There are 8 hydrogen peroxide thrusters located on the module that are used to control and fine-tune the spacecraft's orientation or its attitude during the descent until parachute deployment. Also has a guidance, navigation, and control system to maneuver the vehicle during the descent phase of the mission. The descent module itself weighs just almost 6,400 pounds with a habitable volume of 141 cubic feet, so it's a bit of a tight fit. And then approximately 110 pounds of payload can be returned to Earth in this module. The descent module, of course, the only portion of the Soyuz that survives the return back to Earth. And then the orbital module sits at the top, connects to the descent module via a pressurized hatch. It's where the crew has a small amount of room to move around during the flight to the station. They'll be making use of it during this 2-day rendezvous profile. Has a volume of 230 cubic feet. With the docking mechanism at the very top, the hatch and the rendezvous antennas located at the front end. The docking mechanism used to dock with the space station, and the hatch allowing the crew entry into the orbiting laboratory. The rendezvous antenna used by the automated docking system, again the CORS, which uses radar to maneuver towards the station for docking. Also a forward-looking window in the module that the crew can use to take any manual measurements of the distance and the closing speed using a laser range finder in the event of a failure of the automated rendezvous radar system. The propulsion module houses the oxygen storage tanks, the main engine, the attitude control thrusters, avionics, and communications and control equipment for the Soyuz craft. The propulsion module portion of this module handling all of the orbital maneuvers, 2 of which will be done a little bit later in the morning, including those needed for the rendezvous with the space station, and also the deorbit burn once the Soyuz is at the end of its mission. And before those are deployed, they get deployed, the 2 solar arrays are folded against the body of the propulsion module, which separates from the descent module after the deorbit burn. Along with the orbital module, the solar panels have a wingspan of about almost 35 feet. And the entire spacecraft serving not only as the crew transport vehicle to and from the station, but also stays attached, serving as the emergency return vehicle in the event that the crew should need to leave the station unexpectedly. But back now with that live view of the rocket out on the pad in Baikonur, coming up on 13 minutes away from launch. Just about 47 seconds before the launch, the International Space Station is actually going to fly directly over the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. At the time of launch, the station will be flying at an altitude of roughly 250 statute miles over south-central Kazakhstan, where Baikonur is located. Launch precisely timed for the moment when the Earth's rotation will place Baikonur in the plane of the orbit of the space station, just lining everything up perfectly. And then at the time of the spacecraft's orbital insertion, so when it hits that initial orbit, about 8 minutes and 45 seconds after launch, the station will be just about 1,437 statute miles ahead of it, and then the rendezvous and the chase begins. The planned two-day rendezvous will culminate with docking again to the Poisk module on the space-facing side on Friday, September 4th at 2:42 a.m. Central Time, 3:42 a.m. Eastern. And guests and family will be watching the events unfold at the Russian Mission Control Center in Koryov, just outside of Moscow. So at this point, all of the leak checks of the crew's suits should be completed. And we are just a little under 12 minutes away from that launch. Again, liftoff scheduled for 11:37 p.m. Central Time, 12:37 a.m. Eastern. A group of NASA and international representatives are there in Baikonur to help support the launch, just a short distance away right now from the launch pad. For an update on all the activities there, why don't we go now to NASA Public Affairs Officer Rob Navius.
Dan, good evening to you from the Central Asian desert, where the final days of summer here have yielded a huge crowd for the launch of this multinational crew. As one might imagine, many Kazakh officials are here to cheer on their native son, Aydin Anbetov, who trained for years for a flight to the space station, a flight only made possible by British singer Sarah Brightman's departure from training earlier this year. In an interesting note, Sergei Volkov is launching with Anbetov almost 24 years after his father, cosmonaut Alexander Volkov, launched to the Mir space station on Soyuz TMA-18M with the first Kazakh cosmonaut, Tokhtar Ovakirov. Like father, like son. NASA is represented here for this. Dan, good evening to you from the Central Asian desert, where the final days of summer here have yielded a huge crowd for the launch of this multinational crew. As one might imagine, many Kazakh officials are here to cheer on their native son, Aydin Anbetov, who trained for years for a flight to the space station, a flight only made possible by British singer Sarah Brightman's departure. In an interesting note, Sergei Volkov is launching with Dan, good evening to you from the Central Asian desert, where the final days of summer here have yielded a huge crowd for the launch of this multinational crew. As one might imagine, many Kazakh officials are here to cheer on their native son, Aydin Anbetov, who trained for years for a flight to the space station, a flight only made possible by British singer Sarah Brightman's departure from training earlier this year. In an interesting note, Sergei Volkov is launching with Anbetov almost 24 years after his father, cosmonaut Alexander Volkov, launched to the Mir space station on Soyuz TMA-18M with the first Kazakh cosmonaut, Tokhtar Ovakirov. Like father, like son. NASA is represented here for this launch by Bill Gerstenmaier, the Associate Administrator for Human Exploration Operations, and ISS Program Manager Mike Suffredini, who is making his final appearance at a launch before he leaves NASA at the end of the month. Suffredini told me yesterday that this trip is, in his words, bittersweet, but very satisfying. Suffredini has spent some time saying farewell to friends and familiar faces he has worked with for years in the Russian Federal Space Agency and in the European Space Agency, which has a significant representation here today as well, including Danish government dignitaries who are here to see Andreas Mogensen begin his long-awaited mission. So with everything set here for the penultimate piloted Soyuz launch of the year, that's it for now from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Back to you, Dan, at Mission Control in Houston.
And we're back from Mission Control Houston, continuing to get a live view inside of the cabin of the Soyuz TMA-18M spacecraft. You're looking at Kazakh cosmonaut Aydin Anbetov, who's strapped into the right seat for today's flight. Just at the bottom right corner of your screen is the Soyuz commander for today, Sergei Volkov, who, as you just heard, launching almost 24 years to the day after his father, another former cosmonaut Volkov, launched from the same location in Baikonur. And then just off screen, the third crew member on board today, Andreas Mogensen, representing the European Space Agency. All three strapped in and ready to go. So at this point in the countdown, the Soyuz first and second stage engines ready for launch. Telemetry has been received from the rocket, indicating all the primary and backup systems are ready to go. And as we are now T-minus 7 minutes away from launch, the launch key about to be inserted in the launch bunker. The Russians actually using a real key, transitioning the launch sequence into its automatic mode. And things will begin to pick up over the next couple of minutes now as we march quickly now towards that launch time. Just a little over 6.5 minutes from now. And 6 minutes now away from launch. All of the flight controllers there in the bunker at Baikonur, conferring with the teams in the Russian Mission Control Center in Koryov, doing all the final checks, indicating they're going right along the timeline, everything looking good and on time for this launch. So at this point, we are under 5.5 minutes away. Launch control reporting that the range in Baikonur is clear. The Soyuz rocket ready to begin its journey towards the International Space Station. Some music being pumped into the cabin for the crew. They've been strapped in there for several hours now, anxious and ready to go.
Ground measurement system is activated by Run 1 command. Copy. Combustion chamber nitrogen purge.
And the commander's cockpit display is coming online and activated. The crew members already with their helmets closed, putting them on the suit's internal oxygen.
Onboard measurement system is activated by Run 2 command. Copy. Oxidizer and fuel drain and safety valves of launch vehicle are closed, and the ground filling of oxidizer and nitrogen to the vehicle is terminated.
Getting confirmation the launch key just now inserted, under 3.5 minutes away from flight. So under 2 minutes, 35 seconds away from liftoff at this point. The booster tank pressurized for flight. This to help optimize the flow of fuel and helps to add some structural support to the rocket itself. Coming up on 2 minutes and 20 seconds now away from liftoff. 2 minutes and counting. And now 1 minute away from liftoff. At this point, the ground propellant feed has been terminated. So he's transferring over to internal power. Under 45 seconds.
Vehicle to internal power. Separation of first umbilical tower from booster. Ground propellant feed is terminated.
So there goes the first umbilical tower separating away. One more to go.
Copy, 30 seconds.
Again, all of the propellant feeds terminated, just about 20 seconds away now from launch.
Auto sequence initiated.
Auto sequence initiated.
Launch command issued for ignition. Central side pod engine start.
Launch command has been issued. The final umbilical tower now separating. Engines now firing up at maximum thrust. And liftoff for the 500th time from Gagarin's start, a rocket roaring into the air. Sergei Volkov, Andreas Mogensen, and Aidin Amatov on their way to the International Space Station. Reports good first stage performance. The Soyuz delivering 930,000 pounds of thrust from those 4 strap-on boosters and the single core engine. The first stage of the Soyuz was about 68 feet in length, 24 feet in diameter, burning liquid fuel for the first 2 minutes and 6 seconds into the flight.
Seconds into the flight. Roll, pitch, and yaw are all nominal. Copy. The crew is doing well. Everything's in order on board. Seconds into the flight. All of the motion control system parameters are nominal.
So over 80 seconds into the flight, the vehicle traveling in excess of 1,100 miles per hour already at this point.
Have you loud and clear?
See a fairly smooth ride into orbit for the crew members on board.
Everything's nominal.
114 seconds, or about 1 minute 54 seconds into the flight, the escape tower will be jettisoned. Getting confirmed the escape tower has been jettisoned. And confirmed first stage SEP. The 4 strap-on boosters at this point have been jettisoned, completing their job and dropping away. The Soyuz already at an altitude of about 28 statute miles. The vehicle already traveling at about 3,350 miles an hour.
150 seconds into the flight.
So very soon the launch rad will be jettisoned.
Engines are working fine. Copy.
And you can see the sun peeking in now. The launch shroud has been jettisoned.
Copy. Can you confirm L5 and R13? Send command R13. We switch the camera. Continuing with control insertion.
Getting good reports on vehicle stability. A thumbs up and a wave there from Kazakh cosmonaut Aydin Amatov making his first flight into space today.
90 seconds into the flight.
190 seconds since liftoff. The Soyuz traveling in excess of 4,700 miles per hour.
Crew is doing well, and everything is in order on board.
The second stage, or the core stage of the Soyuz, continuing to perform as expected. It's about 56 feet in length, 13.5 feet in diameter with a single engine and 4 fuel chambers providing between 178,000 and 222,000 pounds of thrust, depending on altitude, for its 3 minutes and 28 seconds of operation. The second stage is going to continue to burn until the 4-minute, 43-second mark. And the Soyuz is going to use what's known as a hot staging technique. Basically, the third stage will ignite while the second is still burning. This is why if you ever get a look at a picture of a Soyuz rocket, there's that open area between the second and the third stages.
$260 seconds. Control system is nominal. Copy. Everything's nominal on board.
Getting confirmation from the visiting vehicle officer here in Houston. The second stage has shut down and separated. The third stage now powering the vehicle. The single engine of the third stage providing 67,000 pounds of thrust. It's going to burn for about 4 minutes and 2 seconds. That second stage separating at an altitude of 105 statute miles.
We're watching you using the first camera with the image of Commander and FE1.
Continuing to get thumbs up from all of the crew members on board. Right now, about 5 minutes, 40 seconds since liftoff.
Are running nominally. Copy. Everything's in order on board. Copy that, and we have good image.
Third stage going to continue to fire for about another 3 minutes.
And we have 11. $350 seconds into the flight. Roll, pitch, and yaw are all nominal. Copy. The crew is doing well. Everything's in order on board. We copy. We're 100 seconds into the flight. Everything's nominal. Copy. The crew is doing well. Everything's in order on board.
So continuing to get good ascent performance calls from the Russian flight control team. Everything looking great. The third stage continuing to fire and carry the crew into the preliminary orbit. Just past the 7-minute mark since liftoff.
420 seconds. Roll, pitch, and yaw are all nominal. Copy. The crew is doing well. No issues to report.
So at this point, 7 minutes and 30 seconds into the flight, the velocity of the Soyuz rocket in the vehicle, almost 13,500 miles per hour. Once the third stage delivers the Soyuz to its preliminary orbit, the module will separate. Then that series of pre-programmed commands will be executed to prepare the Soyuz for its orbital flight. The stored commands, also known as time-tagged commands, allow the systems online to be automatically activated by the onboard computers at precise times. Those systems, again, including all the major navigational and communication antennas, as well as the solar arrays to help provide power to the batteries to power all of the systems on board the Soyuz spacecraft.
500 seconds into the flight. Everything is nominal. We copy. 510 seconds. Prop parameters are nominal.
And standing by now for third stage separation. And third stage separation confirmed. A bit of a kick in the pants for the crew members on board, but that third stage, the single liquid-fueled engine shutting down and dropping away at an altitude of about 125 statute miles. The third stage performing a quick avoidance maneuver by opening a valve in its liquid oxygen tank.
How do you read MCC Moscow?
And already getting reports that the solar arrays have deployed and the antennas have deployed. The Soyuz in its preliminary orbit, the crew safely in orbit, executed all of those pre-programmed commands to deploy.